On the panel today is Dennis Hogan from the Building Commission, David Hallett from Archicentre and Robert Larocca from REIV. Today we're talking about property sustainability and the design, construction and legal requirements. David, what does property sustainability mean?
Well, a sustainable home, Karina, is a home that's been designed well enough and certainly built well enough to reduce its energy demand. So it's not only a more comfortable place to live in, it's going to be a cheaper property to run over time.
And Dennis, what are some of the design constraints people have?
Well, the design's probably the key to the whole thing, Karina, at the end of the day. Designing a building from scratch to have it as energy efficient as possible is really what it's about. And at the moment here in just about all of Australia, apart from I think one state, we have 6 stars is the minimum requirement for new homes, and also extensions to homes as well. So we need to meet the 6 stars. And with new homes, it's much easier to design from base zero to build a new home. With extensions and alterations, a little bit more challenging, depending on you never get 2 alterations the same. They're all different. So they're fairly challenging. And windows seem to be one of the biggest issues. How big do you have your windows? How small can you have them? What are they going to look like? So some challenges in the windows, certainly selection.
And what do you get for a star? You know, how do you earn a star?
Well, in Victoria, we use a lot of the designers use software programs to input all the design features of a particular design into a software program, and it provides you a star rating. That can be improved by adding more insulation in the walls or possibly more insulation in the ceiling, better window frames, better glass, because so many different products these days. It can also improve all the time the actual star rating. So it's about the building fabric. It's about the building fabric. It's not about how you operate. It's not about how you make the products. It's about the actual building fabric itself.
There are principles very much that you should follow in terms of designing your building sensibly from the start, and that means orienting it properly, if possible, getting the living areas to the north.
And what is properly to the north?
Living areas to the north will certainly be better in Melbourne. Having said that, if you're designing a property for other parts of the country, you might look at it a little differently. But certainly in Melbourne, you're trying to get winter sunshine into the living areas of home as much as you possibly can, and get some warmth in the winter through the sun, which is obviously inexpensive warmth. But at the same time, keeping the hot summer sun out. So insulation has a part to play, double glazing can have a part to play, but those are really construction solutions. The design solutions need to get built into the building right at the very beginning.
And Karina, I think it's a variety of ways you can actually do that. Our building regulations are now built on performance. They're performance-based. So right up front, it'll say it needs to achieve energy efficiency and good use of water, as an example. And there's a lot of ways you can do that. As David's just rightly said, you can use a software program. The building code also includes some deemed to satisfy, they're called. So it's a bit like cooking a cake. If you put all these ingredients in and put it for 30 minutes in the oven at 200 degrees, it'll come out perfect every time. Same with the building regs. If you do a certain series of things in the building regulations, if you do all that and construct your building in accordance with that, you'll meet the 6-star provision. So there's a number of ways you can actually get compliance.
It's something that's on buyers' register now. I mean, we've seen a lot in the media over the last 5 to 10 years about the issue of sustainability, and it really is something that our members see as on buyers' radar, but it's not the biggest factor for them when choosing the home to buy. Still, of course, price and location still dominate over issues around the building fabric, but at the same time there's a large reservoir of goodwill towards it, and buyers will look favourably upon a home that has sustainability features, because I think they recognise the benefits to their lifestyle over time and their hip pocket as well.
I know in most of the ads these days you see that this house has got a water tank or it's got solar panels on the roof, and they always mention that in advertising, don't they? Well,
they do, because it's such notoriety now, and people know that those factors cost money and can save them money. They understand the very simple link between the water tank and having a nice garden, which is really important in Melbourne after the drought that we've had. But it's going to be interesting over the next couple of years to see, with government considering new laws that may affect residential or existing residential property, what's going to happen next on that front.
Yeah, David, that's a big issue, isn't it? Most of the houses are existing houses, and so they have to be refitted or adapted in some way to reach those 6-star ratings.
Yeah, look, they do, and certainly a very high percentage of the people we've been working with over the last probably 5 or more years have expressed a very strong desire to have a more sustainable building. So if they're renovating it, as Dennis said, it's not always easy, but it's very much a latent requirement of the market. So people are very consciously looking at all of the ways that they could create for themselves a more sustainable home, which is not just about doing something for the environment. It is partly about having a more comfortable home, but it's also about reducing the running costs of the building.
If you're going to be renovating, as Dave's just described, you need to take the opportunity when you're doing the renovation to the existing building. For instance, if you're going to put new windows in, make sure you put good windows in with that have energy efficiency ratings. If you're going to take off the new...
So just in terms of what is a good window?
Well, there's a range of them, Karina.
Do you mean double glazing?
Well, it could be double glazing, and double glazing becoming far more popular now than what it ever has been. Certainly here in Victoria, in Australia for that matter. Very few homes ever had double glazing, and a couple of weekends ago I went and had a look at some of the display homes, and many of them have double glazed windows standard now. Just depends on the location, of course.
I mean, people in that circumstance can look at how they use the property, of course, because on the one hand the fabric of the property is really important and can make lasting change, but how you live in that property is also important. I mean, how do you get your power? Are you purchasing green power? How do you use water? Do you waste water? Factors like that can have an enormous impact upon your sustainable lifestyle as well, of which the building is just a component.
Yeah, the behavioural component is very important. It's whether you do simple things like turning lights off when you're not using the room. It's about whether you're leaving your appliances on standby. It's about whether you've changed over the light globes over the last year or two to low E globes. All of these little things, fairly low cost items, are going to make a big difference to the overall sustainability of the building and the cost of running it. Just picking up on Dennis's point though, an awful lot of heat in Melbourne is lost through ceilings. About a third of the heat that's pumped into a room is lost through an uninsulated ceiling, so it's very important to get the ceiling treatment sorted, and something like a quarter of that heat again that's going into a room is lost through the windows. So ceilings and windows account for something like 60 odd or more % of the heat that's lost out of a Melbourne home. So if you can get those two things sorted out, you'll have a much more comfortable and sustainable building to start with.
Thanks very much everyone, that's all we've got time for this week.